Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a bit of a head scratcher, one that's kept thinkers busy for, well, ages. Why do we get hooked on art that makes us feel kind of bad?
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it?
You, our listener, pointed us towards this really fascinating puzzle, the paradox of tragedy. And we've got some interesting material to unpack, like why do we willingly watch stuff that makes us feel sorrow or terror or anxiety, things we'd normally avoid, like the plague in real life?
Exactly. And you shared some great sources, including bits from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy on this very paradox. It lays out the core problem and the many attempts philosophers have made to solve it.
So our mission today is basically to explore these ideas, dig into them, and see what makes sense and maybe what leaves us thinking, not quite sure about that one.
Right, it's more than just why we like sad movies.
Oh, definitely. It touches on really fundamental things, doesn't it? About being human, our relationship with art, what we actually, value.
It does. So where do we start with this philosophical rabbit hole?
Good question. Maybe just defining the paradox itself.
Good idea. David Hume, a pretty sharp philosopher from back in the day, he talked about this unaccountable pleasure we get from things like sorrow, terror, anxiety, feelings that are normally, disagreeable.
Yeah, unaccountable is the perfect word.
And he noticed something even weirder. The more intensely the art affects us with these negative feelings, the more delighted we seem to be.
Yeah.
It's completely backwards.
Totally backwards. And it's not new, right?
Yeah.
Encyclopedia mentions Aristotle wrestling with this way back in his Poetics.
Millennia ago, yeah. So you got Aristotle, the later thinkers like Burke, Kant, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche. They've all had a go at solving this.
It feels like we're joining a very long, very thoughtful conversation.
We are. And here's a key thing Hume pointed out.
Mm.
The pleasure isn't just like separate from the pain. It's not like you enjoy the cinematography despite feeling sad for the character. He suggested the pleasure seems internally related, tangled up with the negative feeling itself. It's as if the unpleasantness somehow becomes part of the value, but only in art, not in life.
Exactly. Which is so weird. And like the encyclopedia points out, it's not just tragedies. Think about horror movies. We actually pay for jump scares.
Uh-huh.
Or cringe comedy where you're squirming but keep watching. They even mention Warhol's Empire, that super long, boring film.
Where the boredom itself is part of the point.
Yeah. Art just seems to flip our usual emotional switches.
It does. So the encyclopedia lays out the paradox like this. 3 statements that can't all be true together. 1, appreciating this kind of art, let's call it Art A, involves negative mental states.
Okay, like sadness or fear?
2, we generally don't take pleasure in negative mental states.
Makes sense. We avoid them.
And 3, we do take pleasure in properly appreciating Art A.
See, that's the clash right there. Proposition 2 and 3 seem to contradict each other, given Proposition 1.
Precisely. That second one, we don't like feeling bad, seems like a basic human setting. But tragic art pulls us the other way.
Yeah, the encyclopedia mentions that NPR April Fool's joke about happy endings for operas.
Oh, right. People were outraged.
Exactly. It shows we value those heartbreaking endings. And the whole debate about Tate's happier King Lear version, it suggests we almost want that artistic suffering sometimes.
We do. So how do philosophers try to resolve this? Well, one category is compensatory solutions. The basic idea is we endure the bad feelings because we get something good in return.
Okay, like a trade-off.
Yeah. And the encyclopedia breaks this down further. First, there's hedonic compensation.
Hedonic, meaning pleasure-based.
Right. So the pleasure we get from the form of the art, the plot, the language, the acting, the visuals, this pleasure is supposedly strong enough to outweigh the pain caused by the content, the tragic events themselves.
Like Aristotle's point about enjoying skillful paintings of awful things, even if the real thing would be repulsive.
That's the idea. The beauty or skill of the execution compensates for the unpleasant subject matter.
But, the encyclopedia raises a good point here. Can you really separate form and content that easily in art?
It's tricky, isn't it? How something is represented is often part of what it is. They mentioned Dickens naming characters the veneerings.
Right. The name itself carries the meaning, the superficiality. It's not just a label.
Exactly. So if the form shapes the content we react to, where does the separate distress come from? And where does the separate pleasure come from? They seem intertwined.
And it doesn't quite explain why people often prefer tragedies to, say, comedies, even if the comedy is just as skillfully made.
Good point. If formal pleasure is the main reward, why choose the one that also makes you feel bad? Some people even argue we don't really feel pleasure overall with tragedy, that the experience remains fundamentally painful.
Which then makes you wonder if the sadness we feel watching a film is even the same kind of sadness as real-life grief. Maybe the fictional context changes it.
That's a crucial question. Okay, so moving on from simple competence, there's the idea of a hedonic meta-response.
Meta. Like a response to the response.
Exactly. Instead of pleasure outweighing pain, the pleasure is a second-order thing. You feel the initial negative emotion, and then you feel pleasure because you felt that negative emotion.
So I feel sad for the character, and then I feel good about feeling sad. It sounds a bit complicated.
It does, but think about potential sources. Maybe pleasure in recognizing our shared humanity, our capacity for empathy.
Ah, okay. Like, wow, this art moved me. I can feel deeply.
Or maybe appreciating the artwork's power to evoke such feelings. Levinson talks about savoring the emotion safely, exploring it without real-world consequences.
That makes sense. Trying on sadness for size, knowing you can take it off. And Fagan suggested maybe we feel good about ourselves for feeling empathy, like a little self-congratulation.
Yeah, like, see, I'm a compassionate person. But that raises issues, doesn't it? Rousseau worried about this.
Right, that it's a cheap substitute for real compassion. Feeling pity in the theater, but doing nothing in the real world.
Exactly. Does it make our empathy less genuine? And as the encyclopedia notes, even non-virtuous people feel pity for fictional characters. Augustine even observed spectators seem to want the bad things to happen, which is hardly pure empathy.
It casts doubt on that meta-pleasure being purely about our virtue.
And there's another problem. Meta-response requires some self-reflection, stepping back from the feeling. But don't we often get pleasure from being totally absorbed, lost in the story?
Yeah, that immersion seems key. So how can we be both lost in it and reflecting on our feelings about it at the same time?
Maybe our attention shifts, or the reflection happens afterwards. It's unclear how those two levels interact.
It's still a puzzle.
And the encyclopedia mentions other possibilities too, like pleasure from relief at the end, or feeling better by comparison, Lucretius's idea.
Okay, so that covers the pleasure-based compensations. What about non-hedonic compensation? Value beyond pleasure.
Right. These theories say the payoff isn't feeling good, but something else valuable, like Ridley's point that great tragedies like Lear aren't necessarily pleasant, but they're still great.
So what kind of non-pleasurable value could there be?
One idea is heightened experience. Dubos suggested we just value strong feelings, even negative ones, because they make us feel alive more intensely than everyday life.
Like an emotional workout.
Kind of, though Hume argued the pleasure is still in the representation, not the feeling itself. Witnessing the real thing wouldn't be pleasant. Maybe we enjoy an aspect linked to the negative emotion, like the adrenaline with fear, but not the fear itself.
And then Smuts's rich experience idea that the value is in the complex mix of cognitive, sensory, and emotional engagement, even with the pain.
Yes, the pain becomes part of a valuable, complex whole, something richer than usual experience, obtained without the real-world costs.
Okay. And beyond just intense feelings, what about cognitive value? Learning something.
Exactly. This is a big category. You've got Aristotle's catharsis. Maybe tragedy helps us understand or purge emotions by seeing them played out.
Though catharsis itself is pretty debated, right?
Highly debated. But maybe it's about getting clarity on emotions in a safe space. Other ideas include gaining insight into human suffering, like Scheer suggested a more objective view.
Or maybe it makes us more empathetic, improves our moral character, helps us understand our own vulnerability.
All plausible cognitive benefits. Goodman even thought emotions help us perceive the artwork better. And Korsmeyer's idea, which we'll touch on again, sees negative emotions as helping us achieve valuable responses like absorption or unique insights.
Like disgust, helping us grasp the reality of death in a different way.
Potentially. And then there's just the satisfaction of curiosity, the pleasure of understanding why something awful is depicted, which Aristotle and Carroll talked about.
But the encyclopedia raises good questions here, too. Are these cognitive benefits really enough to make the suffering worthwhile? Why do we rewatch tragedies if we've already learned the lesson?
Right. And is it real understanding or just the feeling of understanding? Lear's point about tragedy offering consolation, the appearance of explanation, is sharp. Maybe we just mistake feeling moved for gaining actual knowledge.
That's a sobering thought.
And finally, under non-hedonic compensation, there's meaning and function.
Paul Bloom's idea that suffering can make experiences feel more meaningful.
Yeah, that the pain itself contributes to the significance. Or maybe there's an evolutionary fiction as a social simulator, helping us practice navigating tricky situations, as Marr and Oatley suggest.
So lots of ways the negative feelings might be compensated for, either by pleasure or by some other kind of value.
Yes, though many of these move away from Hume's idea of a direct link between the negative and positive. They often see the pain as a cost. But some views, organicist ones, insist the positive value is intrinsically tied to the negative feeling itself.
Like you need that specific pain to get that specific insight or value.
Precisely. Okay, let's shift gears to contextual solutions. These aren't about why we want the experience, but how it's possible to have it without being overwhelmed. The main factors are distance and control.
Okay, distance. That's the idea that art creates a safe buffer, right? We're not actually in danger.
Exactly. Burke noted how terrible things can be delightful when viewed from safety. Lessing thought artistic beauty creates distance. It's metaphorical. We can't intervene. We know it's not real. This allows us to process emotions without being crushed.
Menninghaus called it a distancing embracing model. We can engage because we know it's fictional.
Right. But does distance just weaken the emotion or change it? If it weakens it, does that solve the paradox of enjoying negativity? Hume noted we enjoy true accounts of awful things too, where fictional distance isn't there.
Good point. True crime fascination, for instance.
And does distance clash with immersion? Can we be truly absorbed if we're always aware it's not real?
It feels like a tension there. If distance makes the negative feelings too weak, maybe we don't even need the compensatory theories.
Maybe not. Then there's the other context, control.
The fact that we can look away, pause the movie, leave the theater.
Exactly. We have agency over the experience in a way we don't in real life. We know it's contained. We often know genre conventions. This sense of control might lessen the pain or change how we feel it.
But again, does it eliminate the negative feeling or just make it bearable? Some argue negativity is just part of certain emotions. Even with control, it can still be upsetting while we're watching.
True. Okay, next category, conversionary accounts. This is Hume's territory. The idea that the unpleasantness gets transformed into pleasure.
Right, she thought melancholy passions could be converted into pleasure, and the initial intensity was key. Cicero's eloquence making horror delightful.
The encyclopedia mentions Rosin's benign masochism, enjoying fake threats like spicy food, that mind-over-body feeling.
But is that really conversion, or just replacement, like the fear is replaced by relief or triumph?
That's the crucial question. And remember, we only ever react to content as it's presented. There's no raw distress that gets converted. The art creates the response.
So maybe the conversion is really just the artistic presentation itself shaping our response differently from how we'd react to the raw event, like how humor treats dark subjects.
Exactly, which leads toward the next set of solutions. But first, the encyclopedia makes a broader point.
Oh, yeah.
It points out that finding satisfaction in negative experiences happens outside art too. Think historical accounts, grim news, tough sports, extreme exercise, spicy food, risky stuff.
So this isn't just an art thing, it's more generally human.
Perhaps. If it's widespread, maybe the paradox isn't so paradoxical, just a feature of human psychology we need to understand more broadly.
Interesting perspective, which sets up the revisionary solutions.
Right. These challenge the very first premise,
Yeah.
that appreciating tragic art must involve negative feelings that feel bad.
Whoa, so maybe we feel the emotion, but it doesn't have that unpleasant quality.
That's the idea. Maybe the negativity is in our evaluation of the situation. That's terrible for Hamlet, rather than in our subjective feeling. Walton suggested our sorrow for fictional characters might not be inherently disagreeable.
That seems plausible for some things, but what about, like, intense anxiety or disgust? Can you really have those without the unpleasant physical sensation? The encyclopedia pushes back on that.
It does. It suggests the negative feeling seems pretty core to what those emotions are and what they do. So if these emotions do lose their negative feel in art, why? Revisionists can't just rely on distance or control to explain that, or they undermine their own point.
Okay, so what's another revisionary angle?
Walton's idea of quasi-emotions, that our feelings towards fiction are kind of make-believe, not the real deal.
So pretend sadness isn't really unpleasant, like real sadness.
That's the suggestion. But can you imagine feeling sad without any echo of that sadness? What makes quasi-sadness related to real sadness if it doesn't feel bad at all?
Good question.
And even if quasi-emotions do feel a bit bad, we're back to the original puzzle. Why seek out even pretend bad feelings?
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Compensatory solutions, contextual factors, conversion ideas, the broader phenomenon, and these revisionary challenges. It's definitely not simple.
Not at all. As you can see, philosophers have approached this from so many angles, with really smart arguments and counterarguments all along the way. It shows how complex a relationship with art and emotion really is.
Yeah. So for you, our listener, the big takeaway seems to be that there's no single magic answer. Our reasons for engaging with difficult art are probably a mix of things.
Exactly. It could be the thrill of intense feeling, the chance to reflect and understand, the safety of distance, the comfort of control, some kind of emotional alchemy, or even that our understanding of negative emotion needs rethinking in the context of art. It's deeply human, whatever it is.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. How might these ideas apply outside of art? Do we seek out difficulty or find value in unpleasantness elsewhere in life? What does that say about us, about what we value, about well-being? What does your own engagement with challenging art tell you?
Lots to think about.
Definitely. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.